So this morning we're going to hear from John's Gospel, read from the Message translation by David Arms. So over to you, David.
Good morning, everyone. The reading today is John 20, verses 24 to 29. But Thomas, sometimes called the twin, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. The other disciples told him, "We saw the Master." But he said, "Unless I see the nail holes in his hands, put my finger in the nail holes, and stick my hand in his side, I won't believe it." 8 days later, his disciples were again in the room. This time Thomas was with them. Jesus came through the locked doors, stood among them, and said, "Peace to you." Then he focused his attention on Thomas. "Take your finger and examine my hands. Take your hand and stick it in my side. Don't be unbelieving, believe." Thomas said, "My Master, my God." Jesus said, "So you believe because you've seen with your own eyes. Even better blessings are in store for those who believe without seeing." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
God.
Thanks, David. So now Jonathan's going to come and preach for us today. Thanks, Jonathan.
Good morning. Some years ago, I went on a men's weekend to Derbyshire, and this was a chance to go abseiling. Now, I've never abseiled before, but we went on this. On Saturday morning, we went across this bridge, Millersdale Bridge, and it's a disused railway viaduct, 80 foot high. And I don't think I've ever been more terrified of doing anything. So there's a picture here, if Mark could show it. This is the exact spot where I did it. It's not actually me, but this is what it looked like. And you can see the railing I had to climb over and had to hold on to. So thanks for that, Mark. Come back to me now. So I was trying to think, why is it that I was so terrified? Because I knew that the rope was strong. The instructor told us that it was capable of carrying a car. And it's a new rope as well. And the instructor seemed to knew what he was doing, he knew how to tie knots. But it's one thing to know that it's safe, another thing to actually go over that edge, hold on to the bar, and then trust my whole life to a bit of string. So I'll tell you later how it all went. Now, Thomas, in our reading just now, he missed the resurrection appearance of Jesus, the first one, and the disciples told him, "Oh, Jesus, what had happened?" But he didn't. He found it really hard to believe. He wanted some evidence, and the next time the disciples were meeting together, he was there. Now, I think it's interesting that he was still with the disciples, because he might have said that because they seem a bit odd what they're saying, maybe they're a bit deluded, he'd keep away from them, because it was a bit dangerous actually being with the disciples at that time. But Thomas was still there, so I think he still had hope. He still wanted to believe. And I have quite a bit of sympathy for Thomas, really. And of course, when Jesus did appear, he believed straight away. Now, I think it's important to see that Thomas was doubting, but he wasn't an unbeliever. He hadn't reached that stage of settled unbelief. He was doubting. He was asking questions, which I think is reasonable. Now, I'm interested to know what you think. So we're going to try a poll now, and I want you to vote. I've not done this before. Let's see how it works. There's only one question, and you've got 5 choices. Don't forget, when you choose it, you've got to push submit. I'll bring it up in a second. It's an anonymous poll. Now, quite a few of you are in family groups, so if you feel a bit embarrassed to answer in front of others, no problem, of course, don't answer it. But if you can, the oldest person in the group, I would encourage to answer. You've got just a minute to do this, so let me just see if I can bring it up. Let's hope it works. And there's just the 5 options. Let's have a go. There we go. Hopefully you can read that, and if you can vote in the next minute, and we'll come back. So the first person has voted, well done. And I can see how many, but I can't see who. So just do what you can there. Well done. 80% of you have voted. Doing well. Keep going. Okay, coming up to the last minute now, and 95% have voted. Well done. Okay, we'll end the poll, and now you can see what the results are. And hopefully you should be able to see that now. So it's really interesting. So most of you are confident, and half of you are completely sure. But interesting that there's still 41%, and there's 5% who have got more doubts. But interesting that none of you are completely sure it's not true, so that's sort of reassuring. So let's finish that, take that off the screen, I hope. Let me just get rid of that. There we go. So yeah, so I think it's really interesting to see that a lot of Christians do have some doubts. It's not wrong to doubt. Settled unbelief is a different matter. Now, for me, I grew up in a Christian home, and I went to university, and I started to think, is my faith something that I've just been brought up with? Is it actually true? Is it it's just a psychological thing? So I had a chance to take a year out, and I studied psychology. So I decided that if Christianity was true, I had nothing to fear by facing my doubts. And I took a year and I studied the psychology of religion, and I did other things as well. And the fact that I'm standing here now suggests that I did reach the conclusion that Christianity is true. And it was something that I felt was right, worked, it made sense. Now, I wonder how I faced my doubts there. I wonder how many of you have faced your doubts. I would encourage each of you to face your doubts, as Thomas did as well. Do you have doubts about things like suffering? Do you find it hard to understand why God can allow suffering, why he allows COVID-19? And do you have problems with prayer? Why is it that God doesn't always seem to answer prayer? And I would encourage you to face your doubts. If you if you're having difficulty, think about things, read about things, ask other people, but don't just ignore your doubts. Now, going back to the bridge, I'm standing there on the edge of that bridge. They're holding on to the railing, and I do believe that the rope is okay and the instructor is okay, but I'm not totally sure. I can't be completely sure. I've not tested that rope out. I've not seen it being made. I've not interrogated the instructor on his qualifications, but I felt I knew enough. I reached the point where I had enough to actually trust and let go. So I let go, leaned back, and fortunately the rope held. I was able to walk down the side of the bridge, still really pretty terrified, and then reach the arch of the bridge, and then at that point swing out into midair. And in fact, surprisingly, at that point, I actually found it exhilarating. By then, I realized that the rope was going to hold me, the knots were okay, and I was in reasonable control. And in fact, I ended up doing it a few times. Always pretty terrifying, but it was actually fun. And I suspect most of you watching here have taken that step of faith. And in a sense, you have let go of that rail and you are leaning back. But I would encourage you to face your doubts, to keep going. Look into things so that you can swing out into that arch and actually have a sense of confidence in your faith. The more you face doubt, the more confidence you'll get in it. Now, there may be some people watching who have actually never made that step of faith. Maybe some watching on Facebook as well. And for you, you've never actually let go of that railing. And so for you, I would say, check it out. Look into, examine whether it's true or not. Face your doubts as well. Now, don't expect to ever be totally sure. Quite a few people on that survey had reached a point where they were sure, but a large proportion was still asking questions. We can never be totally sure about anything, but we can reach a point where we're confident enough to take that step. And I'd encourage you to take that step of faith. And I'm sure if you did, confident that you wouldn't regret it. So whatever your state of faith, I would encourage you to face your doubts as Thomas did. And as you do, your confidence in your faith will develop and strengthen. And eventually you'll be able to say, like Thomas did, my master and my God, my master and my God.